Hello everyone, it's Chris here. Welcome to the GMJ Book Channel. I must say I'm having great fun speaking about the books. I wrote many of them a long time ago, so I have to go through a files again to actually be sure what I speak about. And it's also possible that I might repeat certain things which were in the previous videos, simply because there'll be so many of them. I mean, we're talking of more than 65 books, which means about 65 videos, which means I don't know which one you've actually seen. So if you've seen the others and you hear me repeating something, then just forgive me. It is, for those of you who might have been here, it's the first time you see the videos. And if so, you are welcome and thank you for being here. And today we're going to talk about one of the non-fictional books. And it's one of those books which caused a lot of, I suppose, anger among certain people. But also a lot of gratefulness from other people. And the book is called Voices, War Crimes, USA. Now, this is not the type of book I ever wanted to write. It's not the type of book which I ever thought there would even be a need to write. Because, the US forces, and with that I include NATO, because NATO is the US. The rest are just a bunch of chihuahuas. Shape. And what I've seen is that there's a serious lack of discipline in these forces. You would have expected them to be really a force of good and really highly disciplined forces, things like that. They're not like that at all. And they're very prone to panic shooting. And then they kill. They kill whatever is in front of them. It's amazing. It's a 500-page book. You can see it is quite substantial. I could have made it 2,000 pages. And you would have thought there's not a lot of information available on the war crimes. In fact, there are tons of those information available, and not always on the liberal websites of the lefties or the communists, as the US would contemptuously call anybody who disagrees with is a communist. Okay, I'm not a communist, never been a communist. We fought communism. But the book was written when I found out that 1 out of every 3 female students attending West Point Military Academy, which is the premier, military academy in the US. 1 out of 3 would be sexually abused or raped. And in fact, there was another guy who taught there as a professor. I don't know his qualifications or whatever, but he wrote a book. And in that book, he also exposed the hazing, ontgroening, I suppose you call that in Afrikaans. But it went quite further. I mean, in the book, and it's in this book as well, you will find that it's always from a sexual way they do things. It's always, there's something sexual in it. It's not just what you would consider innocent or anything like that. So there's a sick mind behind it. And they also called their standards very low, extremely average. That I've seen too. I mean, you just have to look at the best cadet ever, which was this Pompeo, King Pompeo. What did we call him in the old days? The Secretary of State and the CIA head under the first Trump administration. And Emperor Pompeo, the people called him with a lot of contempt. He was actually a West Point graduate, and I believe he came first, so that made him like the superstar cadet. Oh, well, man. If you look at the man and his decisions afterwards, and I write about him in many of my books, then you have to wonder about the standards of this place. I mean, it is really not good. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing impressive about it. When you go beyond the yes sir, no excuse sir, you just find a whole bunch of degenerates almost. Now, it's for you to prove me wrong. It's for you to come and say to me, look, we are not all like that. And yes, there were those who did things wrong. And, when we find out about it, the military justice code will come into effect, and then we will get rid of the bad apples. Well, the fact is you'll be lying to me if you say that, because if you read this book, you will actually find out you don't. You don't. Your entire story is to deny. That's what you do. Deny, deny, deny. You have a shaggy defense. And then you start accusing these people on the other side to be communists or terrorists or whatever they are. If you can get away with it, of course, you will say they're anti-Semites because they hate you and they hate Jews and they hate everybody. They hate their mommy, they hate their dog. Everything, you know, it is like I said in the other books, it's a bit strange that whenever the FBI, which I call in many books a Clinton whitewash bureau, because that's exactly what they were, and today I suppose you can call them the Donald Trump haters bureau or something like that. Look, you've lost all your credibility with the actions in the last 10, 15 years. You lost it. I mean, it's for you once again to come and make up, to get your act together, because you've lost it. But I spoke about that in some of the other books as well. It comes out in this book, you wouldn't believe that actually you people are behind most of the terrorist attacks inside the US. That is fascinating, because it's not me saying so. It's just a study done at one of the famous universities. And they came out and they said that except for 4 terrorist attacks in the last 20 years, there were always a FBI involvement. In other words, there would be FBI sting operations. Now, what a sting operation is basically you would approach a dumbass from the hillbillies or somewhere, and now you are inside this group, but now you start saying things like, "Oh, let's go and kill that senator. Yeah, we don't like her, you know." Or no, let's go and blow up something. Let's go and plant a bomb or whatever. You know, there's a terrorist act. So you're actually behind it, and then these idiots go and they actually do it, and they get arrested, and then well, mostly before they actually commit the crime, but it doesn't matter. It's conspiracy to do it, same in law. And then the FBI looks so good, you know, how we stopped this terrorist attack. I mean, look how great we are. January 6th? Yeah. We know what you did there too. It will come out, I hope. It's pathetic, because it means that you are actually behind the terrorism. It means that your state organs who are supposed to protect you are the ones who's planning the terrorist attacks, and then they keep that fear going. And because of that fear, they can get more money. And because of that fear, they can create a fascist state, which they have been doing the last 10, 15 years. I would say from Bush 43's time, but it was actually his daddy, George Bush, H. Bush, the one, 41, who took over for Ronald Reagan. He's the one who started talking about a new world order. Yes, we know about this. It's in the books. We quote him. He was the president who started talking about that, and then they said, "Oh, conspiracy theory, you shouldn't see more in that." Then, you know the difference between a conspiracy theory these days and the truth is something like 1 year or 2 years until the truth comes out. Sadly so. There's something inherently rotten with the US military. It started a long time ago. I think we can start this by explaining to you what actually happened in Tehran. I think it was 1943, around about there. And there were 3 people there of interest. There was Stalin, the Soviet commander, who was, of course, a dreadful man. And he's also a fellow, funny enough, who studied priesthood, you know, of Orthodox Church. And there's no real difference between Russian Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. In fact, it is the original Catholic Church. They split up and they kept the ways like they used to. They have all the idols and things there, which the Bible actually, from a Protestant view, actually tell you not to do. All of those things are there. They have all the same rituals, which goes back to sun god religions. They've taken from the old times and just brought into the church. I write about that extensively because it still has an influence today. And what people forget here is that everyone knows that Stalin murdered about, some people say up to 20 million Russians were murdered, especially right in the beginning with Trotsky and those. They were very, very bloody times. What they don't tell you in the history books that the people who actually got murdered, most of them were intellectuals, middle class, your lawyers, that type of people, as well as most of them were Christian. Yeah. Strange that that's not in the books. You know, it's interesting to me always when you left something out. You know, it's like a guy who said, "Yeah, man, I went for paratrooper training." Yeah, that's great, man. Yes, wow, you're a paratrooper. He doesn't say to you, "Well, I didn't make it on day 3. You know, I injured my knee or I was whatever." He doesn't say that to you. No, he left this impression. The other guy at that conference was, of course, the Druidic priest and the 33-degree Mason. So was Stalin, by the way, and so was the third one. All of them were 33-degree Freemasons. That's as high as you can go. And at that level, you know, you're not serving God. Definitely not. You're serving Satan. But I write about that in great detail in other books as well. Just keep it in mind. And if I offend you, you know, it's not my purpose to offend you. It's not really what I want to do. But I can back whatever I tell you. Yes, there's a reason why there's 500 pages, why my books are long. I assure you there's another 500 pages of research behind it. And I always invite you, come and research the books. If I say something to you which you find so shocking that you say, no, Chris, can't be, man, it's not possible, then go and research. You're going to find it. It is open source intelligence 99% of the time. So you will find it. And always remember with history, there's more than one view. There's your view, there's my view, and then there's the truth probably in the middle. Winston Churchill was also there. I don't rate the man highly. I think he was an idiot who got lucky. Should have been executed for war crimes. Sadly, he never was. But that doesn't matter. He'll get his time after the second coming. Now, the third one there was Roosevelt. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, he was a fascinating fellow as well because he was the only president, I think, who had 4 terms. I think they changed the constitution afterwards. He died, of course, just before the end of the Second World War. He had the New Deal going, and he was a very free Mason. So in other words, he was under control by somebody else. Who do you think controls the Freemasons? Somebody must control them. It's not a Protestant movement. Yes, it is. It's a front. Yeah, but they're actually controlled by Jesuits. Don't believe me? I have the evidence. I can show you. But these 3 leaders were sitting together in Tehran and they were talking because by this time they knew they were going to win the war. There was no way that Germany is ever going to survive this, by which I mean the Axis, Italy, Germany, and its mates, Nazi Germany. And Stalin then said, look, I think after the war we should execute all the general staff of the German army, the German defense forces. Now you're talking about 50,000 officers here. It's not 1 or 2. And a modern army to this very day and in the future cannot operate without staff qualified officers doing the planning and making sure the logistics are working. That is why only your very best young colonels go on the staff courses. And then if they want to get further, they have to pass those staff courses. And it's a hard course. It's the same as an MBA. It's better than an MBA, in fact. And there are quite a few episodes on legacy where we talk about this. I can think of one we made just 3 weeks ago, but it might take many months before it goes on to the main channel because we're far ahead. But it will be on the Patreons probably before this video comes out. But if you're not a Patreon, man, you're going to wait until November of 2025. But that's where we spoke to Colonel Pierre Frankenhof 3 Battalion Support Group, as well as Major General Koos Bom Laubscher. And they were very much involved with artillery. They are the artillerists, so that's from where they are. And they were talking about the G5, the G6, and the Valkyrie, the Battalier, the rocket launch systems, which is the third episode, actually. But here in the second episode, and that got nothing to do with this book, right? I don't even know this book exists. I'm just telling you, they're talking about logistics. And they work out what it cost to shoot these batteries of G5s. It is amazing how much money is involved. And it's amazing how they work out every shell, every powder charge, the diesel, the main there, everything. They work those things out. It doesn't just happen by chance, you know. It's not that you're walking a patrol and the next moment, a helicopter arrives, let's say a Puma. If you haven't seen the Puma video on Legacy, please have a look, by Mike Frere. Really interesting. And it arrives with food for you. And guess what? There's enough food for everybody. And there's ammunition and perhaps a cold beer or two, you know. Guys, these things are worked out by logistics. Logistics are everything in the world. That is why if you can wipe out the logistics staff of an army, you beheaded it. It's gone. Which is why Stalin wanted to do that. Now, fascinating, during the Treaty of Versailles, is that the one which caused peace on the First World War? The general staff of the German army was actually disbanded and said they might never get together again. Well, of course they did, in secret and then later more openly. And they took a very hard look on what went wrong in 1918 with the First War. And that's why they dominated the second one, because they had new tactics, blitzkrieg, which some people say wasn't that new at all. But that doesn't matter. The fact is they tried something else. They had a good look at themselves and they produced brilliant officers. Now, Stalin's idea was to remove his threat. And Roosevelt, would you believe, actually agreed. Yes, his idiot son got up, and this is a guy who got caught for corruption, basically, with, I think, Howard Hughes. It's in the books as well. Something about aircraft, a wooden aircraft or something they wanted. And he was like a project manager. The guy was just a shyster. There's no other words for him. And he was actually a damn embarrassment. But he was there, and he was like, oh, you know, yeah, we need to do this. We need to kill these people. Please remember, we were discussing a war crime here, right? You cannot just go and take a prisoner of war and execute him without any trial or any, just because he's a staff officer. Are you insane? You can't do that. And yet Roosevelt agreed, and then later his biographers and people say, no, he was just playing along, you know, he wasn't really agreeing, and who cares what little boy has to say, you know, he's not the president. Yeah, bullshit. He was agreeing. He was agreeing. Oh, it's such a lack of manhood that he cannot say no. And this was before he got so ill. I mean, if he was very, very ill at this stage, we could still understand. But then he shouldn't be the president anymore, should he? Then he should have done the honorable thing and say, I can't do this anymore, my health is too bad. And he did admit that when the Morgenthau plan came out, and it was implemented, by the way, it's also in the books. The Morgenthau plan was to make Germany into a middle-aged type of country, no industrial base. Otherwise, they can farm and that's it. And it was implemented. They say it wasn't, but of course it was. I can prove that too. And Roosevelt actually said afterwards, I cannot remember even signing this. That is how far he was gone. Of course, afterwards, we got used to Joe Biden. He was also strictly on the Jesuit influences. Read Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism. I will show you how the Jesuit influence work on this guy. Why is it important? He's controlled from Rome. It's a big deal. The Antichrist are actually controlling you. Think I'm a conspiracy theorist? Well, go and read the book and come and talk to me again. I know I know what I'm talking about. We can actually see the Bible prophecies playing out. And that's what we see in this book too. Because it's not normal behavior. This is a behavior of a rogue state. This is a behavior of a state which has changed, which is not the same as it used to be. It's a state which became the second beast of the books of Daniel and Revelation. Now, you can read these things, it's in my books, and I can actually quote to you. Other people were saying this too. I think of Professor Noam Chomsky or something. Now, he's a liberal. But that's not to say because he's a liberal talker that he's always wrong. In fact, he's not wrong. And he said something interesting. He said if the Nuremberg laws were applied evenly, then every single US president, and you can include the UK premiers and the rest of NATO countries, you can include all of them would have been hanged at Nuremberg trials. Every single one of them committed war crimes. But Winston Churchill here at the 1943 meeting actually said no. And I admire the man, and I don't like Winston Churchill. I know what he is. I know he's a shyster. Comes out in my books. But he stood up here. He did the right thing, and we have to respect him, and I do. I honor the man for doing this. He said no. There is no way that we're going to stand for this type of thing. And the British public will not stand for it either, which of course is important because he needs votes. He's after all just a damn politician. There's nothing nice about him. And he lost the election anyway in 1945. We know that. Clemens Attlee, I think, took over. But that doesn't matter. He stood up and he said, no, this is not going to work. He got so angry, he actually walked out of the meeting, and thereafter Stalin and the rest got him there in the garden. I said to him, look, we were just joking around. It's not true really. The point what is being made here, they didn't do it, by the way. They didn't kill the staff officers. They did kill a lot of other people. I'll get to it as well. At the very highest levels, unless you find a man, and that was Churchill's finest moment ever, who will stand up and say, like hell we will do that, you're going to have a huge problem. Because it rots from the head, it goes down. So what is the technique which the US military do whenever they commit war crimes, which they do every single damn day? And by doing that, they're causing more terrorism. And of course, it shows the utter lack of training, the utter lack of discipline, and low standards. That's all you can say. This is what you expect from a third world military. You do not expect this from a US military. You do not expect this from a first world military like the NATO is supposed to be. And they're not. Really not. What I've seen in my research and what I've seen of them in Sub-Saharan Africa and the reports I've read them in Afghanistan and Iraq and wherever else they were deployed is one of, man, it's pathetic. It's deeply worrying. If you are a person with sympathy towards the US, and I do have sympathy to the US, you should be really worried because these guys are not going to make it in a real war. Definitely not. They're going to. They're just not good enough. It's low standards. Half of them are overweight. And your weapons ain't working well either. Go and look at American Military Might Debunked. I made an episode on that. Or go and read a 700-page book. Or just go online and see a little bit how your weapons are failing. Failing, I say to you, in Ukraine. And of course, you'll say to me, but it's the Ukrainians, we better than them. I remember one asshole, was Pompey's ass of a British officer. He wrote an article, something like, I was a tank commander or something, a tank company commander, and I am telling you our tanks will destroy you. Just all your tanks were shot out, mate. And not only were they shot out, you were too scared to even let the Ukrainians deploy them. Because you were exactly scared of that happening. And so it did happen. There's almost nothing left of the Abrams tanks. I mean, you're lacking in every single department. And unless you wake up, you're really going to find trouble in life, because I'm still joking with you. I'm still laughing at you. I'm still like warning you. Your enemies are not doing that. They're looking at you with utter contempt, and they work out exactly how to kill you. And you know what? Unless you are careful, that's exactly what they're going to do. They don't fear you. They really don't fear you. In fact, I've spoken to senior officers, and they all said to me, we're not scared. We ran the scenarios, and they're leading you so far in AI, you cannot even begin to comprehend how far ahead they are. But it also came out, by the way, that wherever the US was running scenarios, training scenarios, exercises, guess what? You lost every single time. You lost. Every time where you thought you're going to save Taiwan, which ain't worth saving, guess what? You lost. Chinese are not stupid, and they have good weapons, excellent weapons. Don't think of them as 40 years ago. Not like that anymore. You have to start respecting people, and you don't. Because you're arrogant, because you're the chosen nation. Man, you ain't. And the once chosen nation ain't the chosen nation anymore. Not since they stoned Stephen. That's what the Bible says. It's over. It's a prophecy. Your house will be left desolate to you. And don't see that as anti-Semitic, because you don't know me. You should go and see the books we wrote, my wife and myself, Rebecca. Uh, there's a reason why her name is Rebecca, you know. There's a reason why one of my uncles was called Samuel Rabinovich. Yes, there's reasons for that. Just think about that before you point fingers. Is that you have to come to facts that there was a time when the US was different, but it's not like that anymore. That is why these books like this exist. That's why I say to you, it is so easy to write the book. And it was damn easy to write the book. So let's go through it. Let's quickly look at it. I made a few notes this morning. And the one also I want to go back to 1945 now, and that is where the Nazi Minister of Foreign Affairs, guy called Joachim von Ribbentrop, and he is often mentioned in the history wrongly that he was a champagne salesman. In fact, he married a heiress from some champagne company in Germany, very rich man. He was never a champagne salesman. He worked there or something. He was a cavalry officer in the First World War. In other words, that shows you're talking about an aristocrat type of person. You look at his name, Von, that should tell you something. And the fact that he was in a cavalry regiment with a good war record, it should show you something. And by 1945, they had a ceremony, like a party going to talk about his time as foreign minister. And they gave him a basket full of documents like this, all nicely rolled up. And every single one of them was a treaty which he broke. There wasn't a single treaty left, except for where they were still in a pact with Italy, by that time sort of occupied by the Allies, with Mussolini in the north as a puppet government. Besides that one, he broke every single treaty. Every single one, and they thought it was fun. And of course, a year or two later, he got hanged at Nuremberg. Now tell me, when you look at a fellow like Donald Trump, and I used to like Donald Trump, to be honest with you, until I realized he's on a Jesuit influence, and he's totally doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know history, he appoints the wrong people. In fact, he's making so many mistakes that I have to think he's actually doing it on purpose. I don't admire the man at all anymore. But he's still better than Hillary Clinton or Uncle Joe Biden, who I still don't know how he actually won an election, but whatever. You're not even allowed to say such things. But there were a lot of reasons why Americans got upset about it, and you should be. You're probably the only damn country in the world where you can go and vote without showing an ID document. I mean, are you insane? That's crazy. Opening your borders, you don't even know who's coming over that border. But guess what? Who comes over that border? 99% of them are not Christian. by which I mean they're either Catholic or they are Muslim or they are Hindu or whatever. They are not Protestant. You're supposed to be a Protestant country. Do you realize that? Do you realize that your forefathers, the ones who fled Europe, who came to you, they were fleeing religious persecution. That's why they came to you. Why do I know this? Because they also fled to my country, to South Africa. We called them the Huguenots. You called yours the Puritans or something like that. Yes, they fled. And guess what? Now a guy like Biden was on a Jesuit control and a serious Catholic, and the next moment he opens a border and there's about 99% of the 12, 15 million who comes in all Catholic. By chance. Conspiracy theory, huh? No. Start thinking about these things. It's really not by chance. Anyway, the book has only 6 chapters, which is a bit weird for a GMJ book. Simply because, as you know, normally there's 8 chapters, perhaps 9, because that's how long I was with my late wife. We were 8 days together, 9 nights. And so as a way to honor her, I would write all the books, 99% of them with only 8 or 9 chapters. But this one has 6 because it's not fiction. There's 5 of these books at the moment in the GMJ series, which is not fiction. The one we've already spoken about is American Military Might Debunked. The longest book, 700 pages, a book which will show you exactly how bad your military really is. You like to threaten everybody. Let me tell you, you can threaten small countries. You will not get away with it against a peer, and you're not as great as you think you are. In fact, that book exposed you completely. Why did I do that? Simply to warn you, to tell you once again, wake up. You're going to lose the fight. But go and look at that episode or read the book. And then we have another one called Intelligence Briefing, which is fascinating because we've taken quite a few incidents, Novichok and all those things, and started putting them into a book to say what we found and what we didn't and so forth. Fascinating, which comes out of that book. We have Oath of Evil, which I already mentioned, which shows you the Jesuit onslaught on the Protestantism, on the Protestant movement. You might say to me, of course, that happened a long time ago. Why do the church still have an Inquisition office? Yeah, they changed the name, but it's in the book. Go and read. You will find out things there which is amazing. But don't put words in my mouth. Don't start saying I hate Catholic people, because I really don't. I don't. I have a problem with the system, and I have a problem with it from a Protestant viewpoint. But Protestantism has now become Catholic. Actually, you can as well call yourself Catholic because you don't protest anymore, and you follow them slavely. You go to church on a Sunday, which is the mark of a beast. You don't want to criticize. You don't want to acknowledge the papacy as the Antichrist. You don't even want to know these things because, I don't know why not. But why don't you then just go back and kiss their asses? Let's just go and do it. Because you're on the wrong track. And of course, I can absolutely, from the Bible, show you exactly why I'm saying that. And again, you have to go and read the book to find out. And then we have this one, Voices, War Crimes, USA. And let's carry on with it. In the first chapter, we talk about the American way. We always attack the international instances which you actually control. But then if they don't do what you want to do, you always attack them. Do you guys know that for the International Criminal Court, it's not only defunded now by the US, they defund it every now and then because something comes out which they don't like, especially now where South Africa actually won a genocide case against Israel. And you can say to me, yeah, we don't care, we're not part of that agreement. It stands. Whether you agree with it or not, it stands. It's going to stand in the history books. And instead of doing something about it positive and saying, you know what, guys, let's look at this. Let's see if we can win back the good favor of the world because we need it. No, you're just as arrogant as your little masters in Washington, who then say, no, we just deny it, and you call everybody anti-Semites, and now what was the result? Half of the US, and especially upon the young people, the future generations can't stand you. They dislike Israel. And at some stage, they're going to take command, and at some stage, you're going to lose that benefactor which you have from the US. That's how serious this is. And that's why I say, look at it. Don't follow the US example because it will lead to ruin. But there's even an order out that should an American official, from the president to whoever, be found guilty at the ICC court, which I think is in Den Haag, The Hague, then US Special Forces will then attack that court and jail and free these people and bring them home. You do understand you're actually attacking a NATO nation here. It's an act of war. Do you get that? No. No, we're an indispensable nation. We can do what we want. Yeah, that is a word which was used by the foreign secretary, I think, during just after the Iraq war. 500,000 Iraqi children died because of a lack of food and medicine. And she went out, Jewish woman. I think she was from Poland or somewhere. I don't know exactly. And that's what she said. You know what? It's worth it. It's worth it. We were in the indispensable nation, you know. If 500,000 children die because of our policies, it's worth it. Oh. Man, how would you feel if your child dies of hunger because the Soviet Union decided it's worth it? Worth it, no problem. I don't understand these people, to be honest with you, and I don't get it. But I do understand in a certain way because they get away with it. And because they get away with it, they will carry on with it. There's only one force which can stop them, and that's the force of military might. You try your luck with us, we're going to wipe you out. And then they won't. They'll back down like all bullies. They will not do it because, we don't want that. But unless you stop them like that, they're not going to be stopped. And they will be there till the end of times anyway. We know that. It's biblical. It's prophecies. Then in chapter 2, we look at unlawful wars with banned weapons. And then also breaking the rules of war. That happens so often, Now I'm talking about this depleted uranium shells and things they were using in Iraq. And they kept on using them long after they had no reason to do so. And you can say to me, yes, well, sometimes it's necessary, but not at this scale. And the result of that was a lot of children being born without arms and legs or just being aborted before birth. And it even affected the servicemen, your own servicemen. There's court cases going on about that. Go and research it a bit. But it is fantastic. It did once again go back to this thing of yours. Deny, and then perhaps, and then, oh, okay, but it wasn't meant to be. It's okay. No, you don't take responsibility. Nothing. And because you don't take responsibility, your head is rotting from the top down. And that's the third chapter where we say leadership failures at all levels. And we look at, in every single one of them, it's a 500-page book, there are examples where we take cases and we look at them and we say, okay, this happened. And I will talk about one or two here. Because I can talk about this subject for days. But we don't have days. I have to get done within an hour or a little bit over an hour. But your leadership failures are fantastic. And where does that come from? Well, I've been at the military academy, and I wanted to have this woman, so I just grabbed her. I don't need her permission. I just take her. Why? Why? And then you go up through the ranks, and of course you get corrupt as you can be because your 4-star generals all have work at the military industrial complex. And that's why you don't have the weapons you deserve. You spent all this money, and what did you get for it? Nothing. Nothing. The rest of the world has got better weapons than you. Better aircraft, better submarines, better everything. And then you will say to me, oh, but look at our nuclear aircraft carriers. Do you know back in the 1970s, late 70s, perhaps early 80s, there was a US Navy chief. His name escapes me now, but if you research, you'll find it quite quickly. And they asked him, how long will your carrier battle groups last in a war with the Soviet Union? He said 2 weeks at the most. Your carrier battle groups don't exist anymore. What you have these days are carrier strike groups. Why? Because you don't have a ships. You don't have a manpower. You don't have an aircraft. You don't have an air crew. And what you have is old. It's not top of the line anymore. It is defenseless against the latest weapon systems, even if it's brand new. Look at what I said in Codename Lucy. It's also an American military might debunked. Go and look at it. I made an episode on both of those books. Look at the Roosevelt Dreadnought principle, which you've never heard of about before. The Roosevelt is not FDR, it is uncle, I believe. The one before him, Teddy Roosevelt, the man who had a ship tattooed across his chest, and the man who had fought in Cuba with the Rough Riders. You know, he was this bigger-than-life guy, but if you look at him, he was also nothing but a damn Freemason who got lucky. All he is. The thing is, these people have got a technological overhand over you. And once again, it's a leadership failure. You should man up. You should say, guys, we're in trouble. We need to look at ourselves. But of course, you won't. And then chapter 4 and 5, we look at specific crimes. And we're going to speak about that. And then we also, in the last chapter 6, we talk about you supporting terrorism. You know, when I was in the shadows, I could never figure out what on earth is the US and NATO doing supporting terrorism on the one hand, and on the other hand, fighting them. And fighting them most pathetically, I always also have to say, because of your war crimes and your lack of skills and your lack of any type of responsibility for your crimes, you were causing more terrorism than anything else. In fact, if you read many of my books, you'll find out that since US Africa Command, ach shame, let me say it in Afrikaans, acties toch. It sounds so much better in Afrikaans, you know. Ach shame. You're not even based in Africa. And then you want to come and fight jihadism and terrorism in Africa. And since you arrived, it has increased by 20-fold. Huh? That's not my words. That comes from university professors in the UK who actually studied these things. If you ask me, I will tell you, yes, I know. Because I would operate in a certain country and I would get there and man, it has exploded. And then, because we're not unfriendly, we're a BRICS nation, we would sit down with these so-called terrorists of yours. Guys, what's going on? Yeah, you know, the drone comes, it kills my family. And so now I kill them. I've explained this to you so many times, you don't get it. You don't get it. And you know what is even more shocking? When those 3 Green Berets died, or 4 of them in Niger, not one of your damn senators could even point on a map where they were. And we do deal with that also. We deal with that, I think, in intelligence briefing. I have an entire chapter on it. Because, once again, you're not good enough to operate in Africa, man. You should go out. You cause more damn problems than anything else. That's why we don't rate you highly at all. And again, you can say to me, look, I am totally negative towards you. I hate you, whatever. I don't hate you. My current wife is a US citizen. My late wife is a US citizen, and they're both fantastic people. And I have a lot of friends in the US as well. I've got a lot of readers in the US. They write to me that they tell me their frustrations. They would vote a guy in to the president, and then they just see him fall under the influence or whatever influence he is. And they don't understand it. They don't understand what's going on. Well, I can tell you what's going on. What's going on there is you changed in the second beast of the Bible. That's why you're acting like that. But let us look a little bit on what happened also in 1945. I want to talk to you about General Eisenhower. Now, Eisenhower was a damn good general. Let me tell you, for a man who's never actually seen combat in his life, and he didn't, he never did, not once. He was a fantastic staff officer. He was good. He was good at what he was doing. Montgomery and these people, of course, don't rate him highly, but then Monty didn't rate anybody highly. But I rate Montgomery as one of the best generals ever, under the top 5 anyway. But in 1945, when the Allied forces now were inside Germany, they realized that the end would be close. But at some stage, Germany has to surrender. And they were surrendering to the Allies because they didn't want to surrender to the Soviet Union. Now, just the other day, Donald Trump came out and he said the US won World War I and World War II. You played a major role, and we're very grateful for you, because without your factories running and supplying the war effort and your soldiers and airmen and sailors, it would have been much harder. No doubt about it. But you didn't win it. Most of the fighting, 70% to 80% of the fighting, was at the Eastern Front between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany and whoever else were fighting with it. That is where most of the Germans were actually killed. Millions of them. I think 7 million. You also didn't really lose a lot of people. I discussed this in Codename Caribbean, which I made a video about as well. In fact, France has lost more men, more soldiers to death in the 6 weeks of fighting in 1940 with the Blitzkrieg than that the entire British army has lost in 6 years. After Britain ran away through Dunkirk, and you ran, even your hero Churchill ran away, you were supposed to go back to France and keep on fighting. You never went back. 4 years later, you went back. And guess what? Eisenhower was in command. Montgomery below him. Otherwise, it would have been the greatest mock-up you can ever think of. And there were 58 Canadians and Americans for every one of you. You have virtually no casualties. The US, it came out, killed actually more Germans with bombing raids and things than that they killed in action. So yes, you played a role, but by no ways in the world you won the war. Really, you didn't. You did not. And then we can talk about August Wind. That was the Soviet Union attack in Manchuria, in China, where there was the greatest blitzkrieg ever in the world history. But 99% of your military academy people at West Point and wherever, and I know a few of you will not even know what the hell I'm talking about. But that is where they actually went in 1945 after the war ended in Europe, and they attacked and they encircled this place in a double pincher in a typical blitzkrieg movement, twice the size of Western Europe. You cannot even begin to understand how big that is and how great that was. And that was probably the reason why Japan surrendered. Yes, the 2 atomic bombs played a role, no doubt about it. The fire bombings also played a role, no doubt about it. But the idea of the Russians coming, or the Soviets coming, is what probably made Japan surrender. Right? You don't know your history, to be honest. I know a few of you will say the same to me now. Okay, whatever. Let's talk about something called DEF, Delta Echo Foxtrot. It stands for Disarmed Enemy Forces. Ever heard of that thing? Probably not. You probably never heard of this before. But let me explain history to you. So the war is over now. The Germans have surrendered with their allies. And guess what? Now, according to the rules of war, they are prisoners of war, POWs. And since war was declared, it's not like Vietnam where, the people who got shot down is treated as criminals because they were. From a technical legal viewpoint, that's exactly what they were. You go and bomb another country, it's an act of war, first thing. Second thing is, it's air piracy. The North Vietnamese was not wrong to put you in jail, but they were very wrong to treat you that badly, and I will never come up with it. But technically speaking, wherever you go as an airman and you bomb people in a different country without a declaration of war, you are actually a war criminal. That is international law for you. Now, these people were not criminals. These were normal soldiers. They fought, they in uniform, they surrendered. Now they're being held. Millions of them. But Eisenhower has a problem. Eisenhower knows there's no way in the world he can feed these men. He doesn't have enough food. He doesn't have it. And Europe is destroyed. It's totally destroyed. Why? Because of his massive bombing campaigns, which we can talk about for a long, long time, where it was necessary at the end of the war. Talking about Dresden and places. I mean, how many times do you wish to destroy something? I mean, I asked myself, I live here in a place which 4 stories with a guest house in Phuket. And there's about 12, 15 rooms. And every one of them has a big TV and a double bed and ensuite, blah, blah, blah. If you're ever in Phuket, come and visit me. I'll gladly speak to you. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, oh man, how much is too much? Because I'm alone here. My wife's now in Swineland, Switzerland, for a few months still. And they just me and the 2 cats, and it's way too big. But it's the same with, you bombed that place to pieces. There's nothing left of it now. Now what? Now you have all these millions of men. You can't feed them. So how do you get out of this? Typical. Probably spoke to some lawyers. They all lawyers are the same as politicians. And I was one. I know, attorney, not a politician. Wouldn't go that low. And so we said, no. You know what? We're gonna call these captured men, these surrendered soldiers. We're gonna call them not prisoners of war, because then the Geneva Convention applied to them. We're going to call them disarmed enemy forces, which means 2 things. In the first place, the Red Cross does not have automatic access to them. Yeah? Why not? Because we're not going to feed them. We're not going to treat them according to the rules of war. No. Because we're not prisoners of war. They are what? What do you call them? Disarmed enemy forces. Yeah, that's okay. Some say about 17,000 of them starved to death. That's low. Still way too much, but low. And then came another guy in 1989, a guy called James Bakiu. He wrote a book called Other Losses. And he went through the files and he saw that, man, when people died, they would say, okay, he committed suicide, or perhaps he was, had some illness, or perhaps he was killed in a fight. But there's also a column called Other Losses. And he came to the conclusion these men died of starvation. Yes, they were kept in like cattle in compounds, and they died of starvation because it took the Red Cross 6 to 8 months to gain access. And when they gained access, they said it is appalling. Conditions they found there was just beyond anything. And James Bakiu talks about 790,000 German soldiers, prisoners of war, who died by other means. It's a sad thing, because it's this very same Eisenhower at the end of the war. A whole bunch of officers, prisoners of war, were put in a train in cattle trucks. It was closed. They smothered to death inside because there were no air. And Eisenhower wrote a letter of apology to the German High Command and said, I am sorry, this will never happen again, and I will punish those who's responsible for this, and he did. This is the same man a few months later who caused the death of 790,000 men. Now you can say to me, well, perhaps it's not 790. Historians immediately attacked this. I mean, there's a guy called Professor Dr. Stephen Ambrose. You will remember him. He's a guy who wrote that Band of Brothers. Remember, we used to look at it in the beginning of the 2000s. Band of Brothers, guys from 101 Airborne. Tell their story, E-Company, Easy Company, or something like that. You know, we're going to talk about that division just now. Let me say, he was very angry and upset about it. He called it nonsense. It never happened like that. But then came a Colonel Ernest F. Fisher. He was a former senior historian at the U.S. Army Center of Military Intelligence. And he says he agreed with Pacquiao. And he too was, of course, attacked like you can't believe it. It's just amazing. By the way, the Brits, they had the same system going, of course. We're talking here about the people with their concentration camps in the Second Anglo-Boer War. That's where the name actually comes from for you who don't know. Afrikaner nation, my nation, we lost only 1/3 of our people. Yeah, 1/3. You know why why? Starvation, illness, disease. Yeah. And they will say to you, but at least we didn't gas you. You know, this is like in court, where you say to a woman, you know, madam, you can be glad it is a white man who raped you. It's not a black man, you know. That is utterly stupid. It is beyond belief. It is not an excuse. The fact is you ordered these people together. You caused them to be ordered. They died. In law, you are guilty. End of story. Don't argue with me. Don't come with nonsense to me. I've been an attorney for almost 50 years. Okay, we have to laugh a bit now. You know, I was waving my hands like that. The camera went off. Guys, it's a very serious subject, and if I get worked up now and then, please forgive me. This is as serious as it gets, because we always have to remember it's real people we're talking about. I remember when I searched the first terrorist we killed, and I found a pocket Bible in him. It was obviously read and in Afrikaans. I stood back a moment and I wondered, what the hell is going on? Why did these dominees, which we call our pastors in the old days, why didn't they tell me about these things? Oh, why does this dead guy have a Bible with him? He's a communist, man. If he's a communist, he shouldn't be reading the Bible. And what's going on here? And then you start realizing that this is more than one story. The fact of the matter is, the Brits did the same on the system of surrendered enemy personnel, SEP, Sierra Echo Papa, surrendered enemy personnel. That's exactly what they done. They would carry on and do that in the 1950s with the Malayan crisis as well. Exactly the same. I mean, they started in 1901 with the concentration camps. They just carry on and put them in command again of something, and I'm sure they will do it again. But anyway, that's what happened there. It's amazing because wherever you find deployed US troops as well as US or under the NATO or on one of these missions, not one of them can be arrested by the local authorities. So this guy can go out, rape, kill, murder, do what the hell he wants, and he will never be arrested or face trial inside that country. Yes, they have to go to say the US military and say, look, this guy has been raping whatever, and then they will say, no, that never happened. No, of course not. No, are you sure? But, you know, even if it's true, just remember, we are force for good, you know. Absolute bullshit. You should be held responsible. Now you're going to say to me, what about South African forces? Okay. I looked at that too. It's in several books. Also looked in a book called Codename Alphabet 32 about your other war crimes during the Second World War. You'll be damn surprised what comes out there. Yes, some of your hero submarine commanders who sank a ship, a Japanese ship, guy went surfaces, takes a machine gun and machine gun the survivors. And then they have to bloody well find out after the war, he actually shot his own people. He shot an Indian regiment who was captured by the Japanese. They surrendered. They were transported as prisoners of war, and you went out and machine gunned them to death. He should have been hanged. But the guy then died in the next patrol and he got the Medal of Honor. There's only one instance known of a Kriegsmarine, of a Nazi Navy, of a German Navy, actually ever doing that. Ever. I know about at least 5 instances where you did it. That includes the Royal Navy. Yeah, I know about that. And by the way, the Royal Navy guy also got the Victoria Cross. Man, it's amazing. But the fact that you can't be arrested, of course, will make the average guy very arrogant. Because I will get away with it. That's his attitude. He'll get away with it. And it's supported. If you look at Hollywood, and this is also in the book, we speak about them a lot. Because Hollywood, you know what that stands for? The holly is a wood. It's a type of wood, like pine. And that is the type of wood they use for witches. When they have this little thing which they wave around, and it's magic, and it's black magic. You know, everything which the Bible says you shouldn't do. Yeah. That's what it stands for. That is Hollywood. And Hollywood is totally in bed with the US military. They started in the 1920s where they would supply the aircraft and things, and it's still carrying on to today, but they want to see the script. Yes, they have an office there. They got people there looking at the script. And unless that script is positive to them, they damn well will not assist. That's not healthy, guys. That's not healthy. I mean, Top Gun, for instance, was exactly that type of movie. That movie we speak about in the Codename Blue Tang, the fighter pilot book. And guess what? You were not as great as you think you were in that movie. Basically, everything there is wrong. But we can carry on like that. I mean, I talk about a psychologist who analyze these things on how you would bring your crimes out. Where you would say things like, no, it didn't happen. Yes, it might have happened. Oh, it's only a few people who happened. I give you examples on how you play the psychological game, but I want to tell you something quickly here. It is about the rape and murder of a 14-year-old girl in Iraq in 2006, 20 years ago. She was called Abir Qasim Hamza Al-Janabi. If I say her name wrong, forgive me. This is just one of the things I bring out in the book. There are dozens of this type of thing in the book. You have to read it. It's disgusting. But anyway, there are people from a 502nd regiment or something. They were part of a screaming of a 101. So it's a good regiment. It's supposed to be the same as, we saw a band of robbers. And guess what happened there? They saw this girl. One of them were touching her cheek. Why the hell would you want to touch the cheek of a 14-year-old Arab girl? What the hell's wrong with you? But then anyway, they left their post. They were standing at a roadblock. They left their post. They went and they murdered her and her family. They raped her as well, 14-year-old. Then they burned her bodies. And then they denied that it ever happened. Yeah, they denied. Some of them were found guilty. They got a slap on the wrist. Others were not. What came from this is extremely important because just a while later, the enemy captured people. These are different people now. A month or two later, from the same regiment, same unit, and they tortured them to death. And they said, yeah, we did that because you raped that little girl. Can you see how it always comes back to you? It always comes back to you. That one is what happens when you don't have discipline. So don't come to me and say, what about you people? Yeah, I looked at it. With all our deployments of the South African Army in, I think, the DRC, and if you add all of them together, it's thousands and thousands of men and women. They were three cases of rape against them, which by the time I'm talking here, I think one of them has been found guilty and has been delivered to the DRC to serve his sentence. That's what I heard. And we are getting on legacy people who are going to speak to us about peace operations, which is not the damn same thing as war operation. The South African military's disciplinary record, where they deployed in Africa, is better than that of France, of the French army, by far. Now, a lot of you will say to me, wow, that's not possible. So I had all the statistics. It might even be in this book as well. So this thing about, what about you? Let me explain to you something in law. We don't give a hell what about you. We're talking about you now. You know what I mean? Let me explain it in an example to you. Carl Dunitz, the admiral commanding the submarines in the Second World War, up at he's being at Nuremberg. And he was found guilty, by the way. I think he got 10 years. And they got him for unrestricted U-boat warfare. But then he stood up and said, well, what about you people? What were you doing in Japan? You sank 99% of the Japanese fleet. You committed all these murders. And the court said, we don't care what we did. We're talking about you. The what about argument does not stand in law. It's a journalist crap, which you find often. They would talk to somebody like Mr. Putin. I mean, it's like, yeah, Mr. Putin, you know, what about? You don't, it doesn't work in law. Anyway, guys, I have to go. The battery is running late on my camera system. Book is available on Amazon. It's available on hardcover, softcover. It's not on audio. For some reason, it's the only book which Amazon doesn't want to put on audio. You know why? Look at these satanic symbols here in front of it. There's a reason why all your departments, flags, all of them have these symbols. Go and read my books. You'll find out what this means. And you'll be shocked. Because they all lead back to Rome. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Apologize if I annoyed you. Try the book. It's a really good read. And it's written to wake you up. You cannot win a major war if you act like this. You cannot. You've got the wrong type of people in your military. You have no control and you don't know what you're doing. End of story. Until we meet again, goodbye.